My message to the losers: losers, look in the mirror. No? Well, maybe you should. Sorry. Well, that's my feeling. Losers, look in the mirror. For months, Democrats have been saying, how is this even close? And they're right, it wasn't. They could not conceive of a second Trump term, but they should have. When does America ever turn down second? I mean, come on.
The day began, like any other episode of The View, filled with smug laughter, over-rehearsed hot takes, and the same old routine that viewers had seen countless times before. But the calm atmosphere was shattered the moment Bill Maher entered the stage. He wasn't there to charm the hosts or play along with their carefully polished script. He was there to rip the mask off the show in real time and leave no doubt about what it had become. From the very first second Maher spoke, the energy in the room flipped upside down. The self-satisfied grins on the hosts' faces began to fade as the crowd sensed this was not going to be a polite conversation. Whoopi Goldberg, who so often sat in her chair with untouchable confidence, instantly realized that this appearance was different. She was about to be challenged in a way she had not been in years. Maher didn't tiptoe into the discussion. He dove straight into the fire with precision and force. He declared that The View had become nothing more than an echo chamber, pretending to be a forum of diverse opinions, and the audience gasped in unison at the audacity of his words. It was a direct hit at the very heart of the show's brand, and everyone knew it. The boldness didn't stop there. Maher locked eyes with Whoopi and told her that her version of open dialogue was nothing but a shield to block out dissenting voices.
They won. Now they have reality they have to deal with. You know, we'll see what they do. See if they live up to their word. Trump says he's going to deport 12 million people. How are you going to get 12 million people back into Mexico? And today Trump said, I'm way ahead of you. Why do you think I left so many holes in the wall?
The moment he said it, the studio erupted with tension so thick it felt like you could cut it with a knife. For once, Whoopi didn't have a quick quip ready to brush the criticism away. Desperate to regain control, Whoopi tried to laugh it off with her signature humor, but Maher refused to let her escape so easily. He pressed harder, pointing out that the supposed diverse perspectives offered on the show were little more than recycled talking points, carefully chosen to all fit one narrative. The laughter died in the room, replaced by uncomfortable silence and a growing sense that something unprecedented was happening. When Maher delivered his next line, it was like a hammer crashing through glass. He told the panel and the viewers watching at home, "The View pretends to represent balance, but really it's just one opinion shouted in 5 different voices." The words struck like lightning, shaking the very foundation of the show's credibility. The audience reacted instantly, some cheering while others sat frozen, unsure whether they had just witnessed a career-defining moment or the start of a full-blown war on live TV. The cameras caught every flicker of discomfort on Whoopi's face, every twitch of irritation in the panelists' body language. It was clear they had never been called out so bluntly in their own arena before. As Maher continued, he began pulling the curtain back even further. He reminded the world that Barbara Walters had created The View to showcase genuine differences of opinion, a stage where people from all walks of life could clash respectfully. But, he declared, what we see now is a hollow imitation of that dream, a place where disagreement is treated like a disease to be silenced instead of a perspective to be understood.
It just made me think, I'm sure every single member of the Saturday Night Live cast was a Harris supporter. But what if one of them wasn't? What if one of those cast members was for Trump? Would they have felt comfortable saying so? I really don't think so. They would have had to keep it to themselves. That's not a good place for us to be. And I remember when Elon Musk hosted, and this is well before he was a Trumper. This is 3 or 4 years. He was just the richest man in the world. And a number of the cast members on Saturday Night Live, like, they didn't want to deal with him. And I was thinking, really? You have Elon Musk on your show for a week. You could talk even about this issue that bothers you so much, that he's so rich and lots of people aren't. But no, you don't want to even deal with him. That's what I hate about the left.
The more he spoke, the more unsettled the panel became. Maher hammered home the reality that free speech is meaningless when only one type of opinion is allowed. He explained that true dialogue happens when uncomfortable truths are allowed to be spoken. And suddenly the audience realized that the very show they were watching was guilty of destroying that principle. Whoopi tried again to steer the conversation into safer waters, but Maher refused to let go of the spotlight. He was relentless, exposing the hypocrisy of the show's constant moral preaching while simultaneously shutting down anyone who dared to disagree. Every word he spoke burned through the glossy facade of the program, leaving behind nothing but raw truth for the audience to see. By this point, the tension in the studio was so overwhelming that even the camera operators seemed hesitant to pan across the hosts' faces. The audience was hanging on Maher's every word, waiting for the next bombshell to drop. And he did not disappoint. He turned directly to Whoopi and said the one thing no guest had ever dared to say. "This isn't the view, it's your view." The line detonated like an explosion, shaking the studio walls and sending shockwaves across social media within seconds. Gasps echoed through the crowd, the panelists shifted uncomfortably in their seats, and Whoopi's expression hardened into a glare that told everyone she was furious, but powerless to stop the unraveling of her carefully controlled narrative. Maher pressed forward, pointing out that true diversity is not about race, gender, or background. It's about ideas. And he called out The View for betraying that principle by stacking its table with voices that all parroted the same ideology. The hypocrisy had been dragged into the light, and there was no stuffing it back into the shadows.
Harris would be the first woman president, first black woman president, and first Asian president. But I don't vote for who will be the first. I vote for who will win. And for whatever reason, Harris has never been popular. You can count the number of delegates she won in the 2020 primaries on one hand, as long as that hand has no fingers. Sometimes life isn't fair. It's not fair that she's not popular. She's intelligent and accomplished, and in fact was put in charge of the border. And look at how... Okay, bad example.
Every attempt Whoopi made to fight back only seemed to make Maher stronger. His words flowed with a confidence that cut straight through the noise, while her interruptions came across as desperate attempts to shield herself from the truth. The crowd knew it, the panel knew it, and even Whoopi herself knew it. This was not a battle she was winning. As the exchange intensified, Maher began turning the focus to the viewers at home. He asked them directly if they had ever seen a conservative voice truly respected on The View, or if every such guest was painted as a villain the second they spoke. The rhetorical question sent chills down the spine of the audience, because everyone already knew the answer. Opposing opinions weren't debated on The View, they were destroyed. The studio audience erupted with a mixture of cheers and nervous laughter as Maher's brutal honesty left no room for denial. For years, The View had wrapped itself in the illusion of fairness, but in a single moment, Bill Maher had stripped that illusion bare. Whoopi attempted one final push to regain control, insisting that the show welcomes all voices, but her words sounded hollow in the shadow of Maher's relentless takedown. He countered immediately, saying that welcoming someone only to shout them down isn't inclusion, it's performance. And the crowd roared in agreement, their applause echoing like thunder across the studio. The more Maher spoke, the more the walls seemed to close in around Whoopi. She had never been cornered so effectively on her own stage, and the unease in her expression said it all. This wasn't a debate anymore. It was an exposure, a revelation, a live dismantling of the show's core narrative.
Whoopi Goldberg, who, by the way, I hope is still a friend, we can disagree with each other, should not be canceled or put off her show, as much as I totally disagree with her crazy statement. Free speech. She should be there. She shouldn't get a timeout.
Not every single thing has to be for everybody.
Right.
We can have platforms that have stuff on them that not everyone on that platform or who consumes stuff on that platform enjoys. And The View is a particularly weird place to do a cancel.
Barbara Walters invented it a long time ago, but it's The View.
Well,
that's the problem in America.
But
There is
clearly,
one view,
right, and
one
that's clearly
true opinion, and everybody else can go sit in the corner.
The producers behind the scenes scrambled, desperate to find a way to cut the tension, but it was too late. Bill Maher had already shifted the conversation into territory no one at The View wanted to explore. For the first time in years, the hosts weren't laughing, they weren't smirking. They were silent, staring down the raw power of unfiltered truth. And then Maher delivered the knockout punch of the first act. He declared that the biggest danger to free speech in America wasn't coming from politicians, but from platforms like The View itself. The audience gasped so loudly it echoed like a wave across the room, and the camera zoomed in on Whoopi's face as she sat frozen, unable to laugh, unable to deflect, completely exposed on live television. Whoopi's attempt at damage control was immediate, but it fell flat. She tried to insist that the show has always supported free expression, but Maher was relentless, exposing how every dissenting guest on the program was mocked, shouted down, or conveniently cut off when things got too uncomfortable. His evidence was undeniable, and the crowd knew it. The audience roared with approval as Maher continued his dismantling of the carefully built illusion. He argued that when a platform pretends to represent all sides but actually censors half the country, it does more harm than good. His tone was electric, his delivery flawless, and the crowd knew they were witnessing a moment that would be replayed for years. Whoopi's face hardened, her frustration impossible to hide. She fired back weakly, trying to claim the show was about giving women voices, but Maher immediately flipped it. He reminded her that silencing women with different views was no better than silencing them altogether. The gasps from the audience echoed across the studio like rolling thunder. The debate wasn't just heated, it was seismic. Maher was tearing down the very walls of the stage he was sitting on.
They're going to sometimes have a very different opinion. And the answer is not to make them sit in a corner for 2 weeks. That is insulting. It's so insulting to make a 65-year-old, the person at ABC News said, I've asked her to take time to reflect and learn about the impact of her comments. Reflect. How insulting for someone of her age, who's a sophisticated person.
The whole point of free speech is we don't need free speech when we're right, when everyone agrees with us. We need free speech when we're wrong. We need free speech to make mistakes. We need free speech to say really unpopular things. And one of the reasons I'm always proud to come on this show, and I suspect you feel the same way, Catherine, is this is the only space left on television where people can speak freely and not be terrified, right?
Yes.
He was exposing what millions at home had suspected for years, that The View was never about dialogue, it was about domination of the narrative. He pushed further, saying that real progress is only possible when all sides can be heard, not when one side pretends to own the moral high ground. The crowd clapped so hard, it nearly drowned out the desperate murmurs of the panel trying to regain their footing. As the tension reached boiling point, Maher pointed at the audience and asked, "Don't you deserve better than a show that only gives you one perspective dressed up as debate?" The audience erupted into cheers, their agreement thunderous, leaving Whoopi and her co-hosts stunned into silence. At that moment, Maher's words weren't just criticism, they were a mirror reflecting the very flaws the show had worked so hard to hide. He wasn't speculating, he was exposing, and the truth burned too brightly to be ignored. The producers scrambled behind the scenes, cutting camera angles and whispering into earpieces, but nothing could erase what had already been said. The world was watching as Maher refused to back down, hammering the truth into the table like nails in a coffin. Whoopi's hands tightened on her mug, her posture stiff, her frustration clear for all to see. She tried one more time to spin the conversation back to unity and respect, but Maher hit her with the most devastating line yet. Unity without honesty is nothing but a lie. The audience leapt to its feet in applause, their cheers deafening. The hosts were cornered, their usual tactics crumbling under the weight of Maher's relentless truth-telling. Every attempt to deflect only made the exposure worse. Every interruption only highlighted the fear of losing control. Maher leaned back, calm and confident, as the crowd continued to cheer. His message was simple, undeniable, and piercing.
The whole point is they didn't vote for him because of racism and misogyny. They voted for him because they felt like, I think the biggest common denominator in this election is people want a good life and ability to provide for their family.
Well,
and whether we agree or not with Donald Trump's plans,
Black people
they thought that he was reflective.
One of the poorest demographics in this country, but they voted for Kamala Harris.
But there was a split, and more of them voted for Donald Trump than had historically. I think that there's such a desire. If you really think the vast majority of this country voted because of racism and misogyny, you're missing it. Most of my family, a lot of my family doesn't have college degrees.
But the stats are the stats.
But that's not, it doesn't say I'm white, I voted for Donald Trump because of racism. That's not, let me just ask, what stat are you talking about?
Let me just dissect the two.
Yes, you can. There's a lot
hold on, calm down.
The very show that branded itself as The View had become the opposite of its name, offering only one narrow perspective while silencing all others. Whoopi, visibly shaken, tried to regain the spotlight, but Maher delivered yet another gut punch. He reminded everyone that true free speech means defending the words you hate, not just the ones you love. Maher wasn't finished. He leaned in, his voice lower but more powerful than ever, and delivered his final hammer strike. The View doesn't empower voices, it buries them. And today, that curtain has been pulled back for everyone to see. The words echoed like a final verdict, the truth crashing down like a tidal wave on the very set itself. The audience's reaction was deafening, a standing ovation that lasted longer than any moment the show had seen in years. The cheers, the gasps, the clapping. It was a roar of approval for a man who had just done the unthinkable, exposing The View on its own stage. Whoopi sat frozen, her expression locked between fury and disbelief, unable to claw back control of the narrative. For the first time, she was the one under the microscope, and Maher had made sure the spotlight revealed everything she wanted to keep hidden. The segment closed not with laughter, not with applause for the hosts, but with the roaring echo of the audience cheering Bill Maher's words. The View had been unmasked, and there was no going back. On that day, the facade crumbled, the illusions shattered, and the truth rang out louder than the scripted lines. Bill Maher didn't just expose Whoopi Goldberg, he exposed the entire empire of The View. And as the cameras faded to black, one thing was undeniable. This wasn't just television drama. This was history being made live, right before the world's eyes.